Continuing with my boot camp story from yesterday, I left off with me being in solitary confinement. First, I just want to point out that loser who made a fake profile just to comment on my story and say that I'm lying. Ha ha ha! That comment says so much about the kid who wrote it. People don't normally lie about time in jail because it's easily verifiable, and if somebody does lie about going to jail, they usually lie about going to jail. They don't even invent stories about being incarcerated. The only person who would do that or consider that is a child or one of those loser video game playing live streamers. Did I slice my own face to make it more verifiable? Did I give myself that scar? Ha ha! After living a hard-ass life that I have lived, and to have some kid question it, it's funny as fuck. It shows how pathetic and inexperienced their own life is. They can't even grasp someone else going through something. Wow. Well, back to the story. I was in the boot camp version of solitary confinement, and the guards were telling me things like, "You better comply or we're going to send you to state jail for 2 years if you don't." They knew, and I knew, that because I was there for a misdemeanor, they couldn't send me to actual prison. But apparently Texas has a quote-unquote state jail where they can keep people on misdemeanors for up to 2 years. The boot camp had arranged for me to go back in front of the judge, and at the last minute, the night before I was about to go to court, I told the guards and officers and the very head guy that I had changed my mind. I had a change of heart and I wanted to comply. They said they had already arranged for me to talk to the judge, but I could tell the judge the same thing and say that I want to comply with the program. Me and one of the head officers that was also like a lawyer drove from the Poteet, Texas to the courtroom and went in front of the judge. I told the judge that I hated boot camp. I asked if I could trade 2 months of boot camp for 4 months of jail. That pissed off the judge something fierce. "What do you think this is? Some sort of game show?" he said. "I sentenced you to 60 days in boot camp and I expect you to do 60 days in boot camp. I'll tell you what, Mr. Brandt, your time starts over today. And another thing, if for some reason you don't complete the 60 days and you're not one of the top boots there, then I will sentence you to 2 years in state jail." Sometimes in life, if you're hesitant about something, about making a choice, someone else will make that choice for you. The drive back to the boot camp in Poteet was scary. The officer that stood next to me in court had no idea I was going to try to bargain and trade boot camp time for jail time. I had embarrassed him in front of the whole courtroom, and he was calling every guard and employee at the zero tolerance facility, telling them exactly what happened and having them all meet there to confront me and break me in on the obstacle course. You see, I initially made it through my entire first day, and before they put me in solitary, and I had already been through one quote-unquote break-in, but now I had to go through another. And unlike my first day when there was 9 other guys also getting there on their first day, this time it was just me. Also, normally there's just one drill sergeant barking orders and making you do exercises and run the obstacle course for all the new boots on their first day. But since I had pissed off their whole organization, they had every drill sergeant and every worker who worked there meet on the obstacle course, all to break me in. This break-in consisted of, the drill sergeant making you do exercises, run the obstacle course, and chug warm water from your canteen until you throw up. Then they usually make you do push-ups, sticking your nose in and out of your own vomit as you come up and down. My break-in, at least the second one, because I already went through one, was the hardest break-in any inmate had ever been through. They were instructed to go all out. I couldn't give up either. If I gave up, they were going to send me straight to county state jail for 2 years as well. Those were my 2 options. I somehow survived the second break-in. I remember at one point when I was just about to quit, I started thinking about what kind of story I would have if I finished this. I started thinking about how I broke every single sales record selling newspaper subscriptions in San Antonio. I started thinking about the girl I was dating at the time, and I started thinking about my mother and how disappointed she was that I had ended up in jail. I started laughing manically at that point on the obstacle course. I was screaming at the drill sergeant, screaming right back at him, "You can't break me! You can't break me!" Finally, one by one, each of the 10 or so drill sergeants started walking away until it was just me and one of the most sadistic men I had ever met. We'll call him Mr. C. Mr. C kept me out there another 20 minutes, forcing me to do push-ups in and out of my own vomit before he, too, finally gave up. Right afterward, they had me get in line for lunch, and even though I was starving earlier in the day, after that break-in, I couldn't swallow anything. The guards were yelling at me to eat, but the only thing I could get down was a couple bites of tomatoes or the lettuce for my sandwich. For the next 64 days, I was an inmate at ZT, and I ended up making it to one of the top boot leaders like the judges demanded. I was finally released on April 3rd, 1998. My twin brother was waiting for me at the jailhouse and handed me a marble cigarette like the asshole he is. I have a lot of memories from those 64 days. I remember the guards. I remember the other inmates. I remember the field trips we went on. We weren't allowed any phone calls and only 2 letters per week. I remember the letters I received and the letters I sent too. Sometimes I still do the same exercises and calisthenics I learned in boot camp. It was an interesting experience to say the least. And I'm going to tell a few more stories about boot camp all this week. Ha ha, that's going to piss them off. Ha ha. It seems to really piss off like losers who have led very uninteresting lives. Anyone that has half a brain can see I'm telling the truth. And once again, this can all be verified through witnesses and paperwork, bitch. I was one of the most memorable people ever to go to that boot camp. They called me Boot Lockdown. That was my nickname, Boot Lockdown. And out of all the thousands or so people that went through that ZT boot camp, I'm willing to bet none of them graduated from a prestigious university. None of them have one of the top-rated books on Amazon. And none of them have a TikTok page with thousands of followers. The majority of the people in that boot camp got stuck in the system and became more evil and more cold than they already were. Me, I feed 100 stray cats every morning. Ow! Here's going to do. Haters gonna hate because they ain't. Haters gonna hate because they ain't. I'm Mr.G. Come back tomorrow for more boot camp stories. Aloha.